David. Oh God, David. Yes. Those were the words my wife of 40 years screamed in our bed on our anniversary night. The problem. My name is Marcus. David is my brother. My name is Marcus Washington. I'm 58 years old, and I've spent the last 4 decades building what I thought was the perfect family. 3 beautiful children, a successful construction business, a house in the suburbs of Atlanta that I paid off with my own blood and sweat. But as I stood there in our bedroom doorway, watching my wife writhe beneath me with her eyes closed, moaning another man's name, my own brother's name, I realized my entire life had been a lie. She didn't see me at first. The lights were dimmed, and she was lost in her own world, calling out for David like he was the love of her life. When she finally opened her eyes and saw me standing there, the look of terror that crossed her face told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't the first time. This wasn't a mistake. This was the truth finally revealing itself. Marcus. Baby, I was. She started, scrambling to cover herself. You were what, Denise? You were thinking about my brother while you were with your husband on our anniversary. The silence that followed was deafening. 40 years of marriage, and we'd never been this quiet together. I could hear my own heart beating, could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, the same clock we'd bought together on our 5th anniversary, back when I thought we were building something real. How long? I asked, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. She couldn't look at me. Marcus, please, let me explain. How long, Denise? It's not what you think. But I knew exactly what it was. The pieces started falling into place like dominoes. The family barbecues where she'd always sit next to David. The way she'd light up when he called. The mysterious doctor's appointments she'd had over the years that she never wanted to discuss. The business trips she'd take alone, always coincidentally when David was traveling for his job as a sales manager. And then the thought that made my blood run cold, our children. Marcus Jr., born in 1987. Denise Jr., born in 1990. And little Angela, born in 1993. I looked at Denise lying there, wrapped in our anniversary sheets, and I knew I had to ask the question that would either save my sanity or destroy it completely. Are they mine? She started crying then, and I had my answer before she said a word. Let me take you back to 1984, when this whole nightmare began. I was 24 years old, working construction with my father's company, and I thought I had the world figured out. I'd been dating Denise for 2 years, and she was everything I wanted in a woman. Beautiful, smart, ambitious. She worked as a secretary at a law firm downtown, and she had dreams of becoming a paralegal. David was 26 then, already making good money in sales. He'd always been the smooth talker in the family, the one who could sell ice to an Eskimo. While I was out there swinging hammers and mixing concrete, David was wearing suits and taking clients out to fancy dinners. Our parents always said we complemented each other. I was the worker, he was the talker. When I first introduced Denise to David at our parents' 30th anniversary party, I was proud as hell. Look what I got, I thought. Look at this beautiful woman who chose me over all the other guys trying to get her attention. David shook her hand, flashed that $1,000,000 smile of his, and said, Marcus always had good taste. I should have seen the way she held onto his hand just a beat too long. Should have noticed how her laugh got a little higher when she talked to him. Should have paid attention when she asked me, later that night, what does David do for work again? But I was in love, and love makes you stupid. Love makes you trust when you should be watching. Love makes you believe in fairy tales when you should be paying attention to reality. We got married in June of 1985. David was my best man, of course. He gave a speech at the reception about how happy he was that I'd found someone who deserved me, how Denise was the perfect woman for his little brother. Everyone laughed and applauded. Denise glowed under the attention. I felt like the luckiest man alive. Our honeymoon was in the Bahamas. 7 days of paradise. When we got back, David helped us move into our first apartment, a little 2-bedroom place in East Point. He was there every day that first week, helping us unpack boxes, setting up furniture, making sure we had everything we needed. "Family takes care of family," he'd say whenever I tried to thank him. I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. The first year of marriage was everything I dreamed it would be. Denise got promoted to paralegal. I started my own small construction crew. We were building something together, planning for the future. We talked about kids, about buying a house, about growing old together. David came around often. Too often, I realize now. But at the time, I was just happy my wife got along with my family. She'd cook dinner for all of us on Sundays. She'd remember David's birthday, his favorite foods, the way he liked his coffee. I thought she was just being a good sister-in-law. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with warning signs or dramatic music. It seeps into your life like carbon monoxide, odorless, colorless, deadly. By the time you realize what's happening, you've already been poisoned. In 1986, Denise started working late more often. Big case, she said. Important clients. She'd come home tired, stressed, needing space to decompress. I gave her that space. I supported her career, encouraged her ambitions. When she said she needed to travel to Columbus for depositions, I kissed her goodbye and wished her luck. I didn't know David's sales territory had expanded to Columbus that same month. The signs were everywhere, but I was too blind to see them. Or maybe I saw them and chose to ignore them because the truth was too painful to face. Either way, I was a fool. In 1987, when Denise told me she was pregnant with our first child, I cried tears of joy. We'd been trying for months, and I'd started to worry that maybe something was wrong with one of us. But there she was, glowing and beautiful, carrying our baby. Marcus Jr. was born on October 15, 1987. 8 pounds, 2 ounces of pure perfection. He had my name, but when I looked at him in the hospital nursery, I noticed he didn't really look like me. The nurses said babies change, that sometimes they look like one parent first and then gradually take on features of the other. "He's got your eyes," Denise would say, but I could never quite see it. David was at the hospital within hours of the birth. He brought flowers, cigars, a teddy bear bigger than the baby. He held Marcus Jr. with the kind of tenderness I'd never seen from him before, staring down at the baby like he was looking at a miracle. "He's beautiful, brother," David said, but he was looking at Denise when he said it, not at me. I chalked it up to excitement. Everyone gets emotional around babies. The first year of Marcus Jr.'s life was a blur of sleepless nights and diaper changes. Denise was a natural mother, but she seemed different somehow. More distant from me, more protective of the baby. She didn't want to leave him with babysitters, didn't want to go out for date nights like we used to. "I just want to be close to him," she'd say. "He needs his mother." But she'd let David watch him without hesitation. David, who'd never shown much interest in kids before, became the doting uncle. He'd come by after work just to hold the baby, to feed him, to watch him sleep. He bought Marcus Jr. everything: clothes, toys, a college savings bond that I couldn't afford at the time. "Uncle David spoils you too much," I'd tell my son, but I was grateful. My brother was helping raise my boy, and I thought that was what family was supposed to do. In 1990, Denise got pregnant again. This time, she didn't seem as happy about it. She was quiet, worried, spending a lot of time on the phone with her doctor about complications that she wouldn't discuss with me. "Everything's fine," she'd insist when I asked. "Just normal pregnancy stuff." Denise Jr. was born on March 3, 1990. Another healthy baby, another child who didn't quite look like me. This one had David's nose, his chin, his way of squirming when she was upset. "She's got the Washington genes," my mother said, but I started to wonder which Washington genes she meant. David was even more involved with Denise Jr. than he'd been with Marcus Jr. He'd drive across town just to see her, to hold her, to help with nighttime feedings when I was working early shifts. Denise seemed more comfortable with his help than mine. "David has such a gentle touch with babies," she'd say. "He's a natural father." Those words should have been a red flag. They should have made me ask questions, demand answers, confront the growing suspicions that I kept pushing down. But I loved my wife, trusted my brother, and believed in the life we were building together. By 1993, we'd bought our first house in Decatur. A 3-bedroom ranch with a big backyard, perfect for raising kids. David helped us with the down payment, a loan, he said, that I could pay back when business got better. He also helped us move, painted the kids' rooms, installed new fixtures in the bathrooms. You don't have to do all this, I told him. Family takes care of family, he said, same as always. When Angela was born that September, I was so busy with work and the new house that I barely had time to notice that she looked nothing like me either. 3 kids, and not one of them had inherited my features, my build, my mannerisms. But they all had David's smile. The worst part about being betrayed by the people you love most is that you participate in your own destruction. Every time I chose trust over suspicion, every time I gave them the benefit of the doubt, every time I believed their explanations instead of my own instincts, I was helping them hurt me. By the mid-1990s, David was essentially living at our house. He'd come for dinner 3 or 4 times a week. He had his own key for emergencies. The kids called him their favorite uncle, and he called them his little angels. He knew their schedules better than I did, their likes and dislikes, their fears and dreams. I was working 60-hour weeks trying to build my construction business into something that could support our growing family. Denise had gone back to work part-time at the law firm, but she said she needed help with the kids. David volunteered to pick them up from school, to take them to doctor's appointments, to help with homework. You're working so hard, baby, Denise would say. David just wants to help lighten the load. And I was grateful. God help me, I was grateful that my brother was willing to step up and help raise my children while I was out breaking my back to provide for them. But there were moments, brief, fleeting moments, when something felt off. Like the time I came home early from a job and found David and Denise sitting very close together on the couch, deep in conversation that stopped abruptly when I walked in. We were just talking about Marcus Jr.'s grades, Denise explained quickly. Or the time I called the house from a job site and heard David's voice in the background, even though Denise had said she was home alone with the kids. He stopped by to drop off some toys, she said when I asked about it later. I forgot to mention it. There were phone calls at odd hours that Denise would take in another room. Business trips that seemed to coincide with David's travel schedule. A familiarity between them that went beyond normal in-laws, a chemistry that I told myself I was imagining. You're being paranoid, I'd tell myself. These are the 2 people who love you most in the world. They would never hurt you. But love and hurt aren't mutually exclusive. Sometimes the people who love you are the ones who destroy you. In 1998, when Angela was 5, she said something that should have opened my eyes. We were at a family barbecue, and she was playing with David's wallet, pulling out credit cards and pictures. Look, Daddy, she said, showing me a photo. Uncle David has a picture of our family in his wallet. It was a photo of Denise and the 3 kids at the beach. Just them. Know me. Where was I when this picture was taken? I asked Denise later. You were working, remember? You couldn't come to the beach that day. But I didn't remember any beach trip. And I couldn't understand why David would carry a picture of my family without me in it. There were other things too. Small things that didn't seem important at the time but that I now realize were massive red flags. David knew where Denise kept the spare house key. He knew her work schedule better than I did. He knew which grocery store she preferred, what brand of coffee she drank, what size clothes she wore. When Denise went through a phase of wanting to redecorate the house, David was the one who helped her pick out furniture, paint colors, curtains. They'd spend hours together at furniture stores and home improvement centers, coming back with receipts for things I couldn't afford and explanations about sales and discounts that didn't quite add up. David has such good taste, Denise would say. And he knows where to get the best deals. I should have asked why my brother was so invested in decorating my house. Should have wondered why he seemed to know my wife's preferences better than I did. Should have questioned why he was always available when she needed help, always ready to step in when I was working. Instead, I worked harder, thinking that if I could just make more money, be more successful, provide better for my family, then everything would be perfect. I built my business into one of the most successful construction companies in the metro Atlanta area. We moved to a bigger house in Alpharetta in 2005. The kids went to private schools, took music lessons, played sports. Denise got her degree and became a full paralegal. From the outside, we looked like the American dream. But dreams can be lies. And sometimes the people living in your dream house are living in their own dream with someone else. Standing there in my bedroom doorway, watching my wife recover from calling out my brother's name during our anniversary night, I felt something die inside me. Not just love, that had been slowly suffocating for years without me realizing it. What died was hope. The hope that I'd been wrong about all those little signs, all those nagging suspicions I'd pushed down over the decades. "Marcus, please, let me explain," Denise said, clutching the sheets around her like they could protect her from the truth. "Explain what? Explain how you've been thinking about David while you're in bed with me? Explain how long you've been having an affair with my brother? Or explain how many of my children aren't actually mine?" She flinched at each question like I was slapping her. Good. She should hurt. She should feel a fraction of what I was feeling. It's not like that," she whispered. "Then tell me what it's like, Denise. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife of 40 years has been playing house with my brother behind my back. And I need to know how deep this goes." I walked over to our dresser, the same dresser David had helped us pick out 15 years ago, and pulled out a clean shirt. My hands were shaking, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "Are you leaving?" she asked, panic creeping into her voice. "I'm getting dressed. Then we're going to have a conversation about our marriage, our children, and how long you and David have been making a fool out of me." She started crying then, ugly sobs that would have broken my heart just an hour ago. Now they just made me angry. 40 years of tears, 40 years of manipulation, 40 years of playing the victim while she victimized me. "Marcus, I love you. I've always loved you. But you love him too, don't you?" Silence. "Don't you?" "Yes," she whispered so quietly I almost didn't hear it. That one word hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Yes. Simple, honest, devastating. After 4 decades of lies, she'd finally told me the truth about something. "How long? Marcus dash. How long have you been in love with my brother?" She was quiet for so long, I thought she wasn't going to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "Since before we got married." The room started spinning. Since before we got married. That meant our entire marriage had been a lie. Our wedding day, our honeymoon, the birth of our children, every anniversary, every "I love you," all of it built on a foundation of betrayal. "Then why did you marry me?" "Because I thought I could make it work. I thought I could love you the way you deserved to be loved. And I do love you, Marcus. Just not the way I love him. Not the way I love him." Those 6 words destroyed 40 years of my life. I sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. "The kids. Are they mine?" "Marcus Jr. is yours," she said quickly. "I swear to God, Marcus Jr. is your son." "And the girls?" Silence again. "And the girls, Denise?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I honestly don't know." I couldn't breathe. The woman I'd built my life around, the woman I'd worked myself nearly to death for, the woman I'd trusted with everything, she didn't know if my own daughters were biologically mine. "You don't know," I repeated, testing the words, trying to understand how someone could not know something so fundamental. "David and I, there were times when we were together and times when you and I were together, and the timing. You were sleeping with both of us. It wasn't like that. What was it like then? Because it sounds like you were having an affair with my brother while trying to get pregnant with my children. It sounds like you were playing Russian roulette with paternity and letting me raise kids that might not even be mine." She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. Part of me, the part that had loved her for 4 decades, wanted to comfort her. But a larger part, the part that was just beginning to understand the scope of her betrayal, wanted to shake her until she told me everything. Does he know? Does David know the girls might be his? We've talked about it. You've talked about it. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You and my brother have discussed the possibility that he might be the father of children I've been raising as my own. And neither of you thought I had a right to know. We didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to hurt me? I stood up, fury replacing the exhaustion. You've been lying to me for 40 years, stealing from me, making me pay for children that might not be mine, and you didn't want to hurt me? Marcus, please dash. Get out. What? Get out of this bedroom. Get out of this bed. I can't stand to look at you right now. She gathered her clothes and left, still crying. I heard the guest room door close down the hall, and then the house was quiet except for the sound of my own heartbeat and the grandfather clock that suddenly seemed to be mocking me with every tick. I sat there on my marriage bed, surrounded by 40 years of memories that I now had to question. Every family photo on the dresser, every anniversary gift, every moment of happiness, all of it contaminated by the truth I'd finally learned. My wife loved my brother. My children might not be mine. My life had been a lie. And somehow, I had to figure out what to do about it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I did what any man in my situation would do. I started looking for evidence. If Denise and David had been carrying on an affair for 20 years or more, there had to be proof somewhere. Phone records, credit card statements, something that would show me the full extent of their betrayal. I started in Denise's home office, a small room off the kitchen where she kept her work files and personal paperwork. I'd never had reason to go through her things before. I'd trusted her completely. But trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. In her desk drawer, underneath a stack of legal briefs, I found a cell phone I'd never seen before. Not her work phone, not the phone I knew about. This was a small, cheap flip phone, the kind people use when they don't want their calls tracked. I opened it and scrolled through the recent calls. David's number appeared dozens of times over the past month alone. Long conversations, short check-ins, text messages that made my blood run cold. Missing you already. Can't wait for next week. Marcus is working late again. Come by after 8. The kids asked when Uncle David is coming for dinner. I said soon. I love you. Love you too. Always have. 20 years of secret communications. 20 years of I love you messages between my wife and my brother while I worked to support a family that wasn't completely mine. I kept digging. In a shoebox in her closet, I found receipts from restaurants I'd never been to, hotels in cities where she'd claimed to be on business trips alone. But the receipts showed 2 meals, double occupancy rooms, couples spa treatments. In 2019, while I was working on a major commercial project that kept me out of town for weeks at a time, Denise had taken a girls' weekend to Savannah. The hotel receipt told a different story. Mr. and Mrs. David Washington had checked into a luxury suite overlooking the river. Mr. and Mrs. David Washington. They'd been playing house, using his name like they were really married. I found more. Years of evidence, hidden in plain sight. Credit card statements showing charges for jewelry I'd never seen Denise wear, dinners on dates that weren't our anniversaries, gifts purchased on birthdays that weren't mine. But the worst discovery came when I found the DNA test results hidden in her jewelry box. 3 tests. 1 for each of our children. The results were exactly what I'd feared. Marcus Jr. showed a 99.97% probability of being my biological son. Denise Jr. showed 0% probability. Angela showed 0% probability. 2 of my 3 children weren't mine, and Denise had known for years. But there was more. Paperwork from a fertility clinic, showing that Denise had been tracking her ovulation cycles, timing her encounters with both me and David to maximize the chances of pregnancy while making paternity uncertain. She'd been playing a sick game, using both of us, manipulating us both, all while pretending to be the loving wife and devoted sister-in-law. I found bank statements for accounts I didn't know existed. Money that David had been giving her over the years, supposedly for household expenses and the kids' activities. Thousands of dollars that I'd never seen, never benefited from, money that had been flowing from my brother to my wife like secret alimony payments. The more I discovered, the more I realized how deep their deception went. This wasn't just an affair, it was a conspiracy. They'd been working together to manage me, to keep me in the dark, to make sure I kept working and providing while they lived their real life together. I thought about all the times David had been at our house when I came home from work. All the family dinners where they'd sit together, laugh together, share inside jokes that I didn't understand. All the times Denise had defended David when I'd complained about him overstaying his welcome or being too involved in our family decisions. "He's just trying to help," she'd always say. "He cares about us." He cared about her. And she'd been protecting him, covering for him, lying for him for decades. I found letters, too. Love letters that David had written to Denise over the years, hidden in the bottom of her lingerie drawer. Letters talking about their future together, about how someday they wouldn't have to sneak around, about how much he loved watching their children grow up. Their children. He'd written about Angela and Denise Jr. like they were his daughters, which they probably were. One letter from 2010 made me physically sick. "I know this is hard, baby, but Marcus is a good provider and he loves the kids. He's giving them opportunities one couldn't give them on my own. Once they're all grown and settled, we can figure out how to be together openly. Until then, I'm grateful for every stolen moment we have." I was the useful fool. The paycheck. The cover story. The man who worked himself to the bone to provide for children who called another man daddy in their hearts while calling me daddy to my face. By sunrise, I had assembled a pile of evidence that painted a clear picture. My wife and my brother had been in love for 40 years, had been having an affair for at least 20, had probably conceived 2 children together, and had been systematically deceiving me while I supported them all. But discovery was just the beginning. Now I had to decide what to do with the information. Confrontation was inevitable. But I wasn't going to make the same mistake I'd made 40 years ago. I wasn't going to trust anyone anymore. I wasn't going to give them the benefit of the doubt or hope for the best or believe their explanations. This time, I was going to be strategic. This time, I was going to make them pay for what they'd done to me. This time, I was going to get justice. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 15 years. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out how to handle the biggest crisis of my life. Denise had already left for her job, probably relieved to get out of the house after our confrontation the night before. The kids were all grown and living their own lives now, so I had the house to myself to process everything I'd learned. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by evidence of my wife's betrayal, drinking coffee from a mug that David had given me for Father's Day 3 years ago. "World's greatest dad," it said. The irony was suffocating. Around noon, my phone rang. David. For the first time in 40 years, seeing my brother's name on my caller ID filled me with rage instead of warmth. "Hey, Marcus," he said when I answered. His voice sounded nervous. "Denise called me. She said you two had some kind of fight last night." "Did she tell you what kind of fight?" "She said you were upset about something, but she wouldn't go into details. You know how women are, sometimes they get emotional about things that aren't really a big deal." I almost laughed. Here was my brother, the man who'd been screwing my wife for 20 years, trying to gaslight me about her being emotional. "Come over," I said. "What?" "Come over to the house. We need to talk." "Marcus, I'm at work. Can't this wait until dash?" "No, it can't wait. We need to talk now." There was a long pause. "Okay. I'll be there in an hour." I spent that hour preparing for the most important conversation of my life. I laid out some of the evidence on the kitchen table. Not all of it, but enough to make my point. The secret phone, a few of the hotel receipts, one of the love letters. When David walked through my front door, he looked exactly like he had when we were kids and he'd been caught breaking something. Nervous, guilty, ready with an explanation that would somehow make everything my fault. "What's all this about, Marcus? Denise said you were acting crazy last night." "Sit down, David." "I'd rather stand." I said sit down. Something in my voice must have convinced him because he pulled out a kitchen chair and sat across from me. His eyes immediately went to the items on the table. "What is that?" I picked up the secret phone. "This is a phone I found in Denise's desk. A phone she's been using to call you. Want to see some of the messages?" His face went pale, but he tried to bluff his way through it. "Marcus, I don't know what you think I think you've been screwing my wife for 20 years. I think 2 of my children are actually yours. And I think you both have been playing me for a fool while I worked to support your secret family." The silence that followed was deafening. David stared at the phone in my hands like it was a bomb about to explode. "Marcus, tell me the truth. For once in your life, tell me the goddamn truth." He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something change in his expression. The guilt was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Relief, maybe. Like he was tired of lying. "It wasn't supposed to happen," he said quietly. "But it did happen." "Yes." "For how long?" Since around the time Marcus Jr. was born." "So for over 30 years. "Yes." I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. My brother, my best man, my business partner, the person I'd trusted most in the world besides Denise, was confirming that he'd been betraying me for 3 decades. "Do you love her?" "Yes." "More than you love me?" He couldn't look at me when he answered. "Yes." "Are the girls yours?" We think so. We're not completely sure, but probably." "You're not completely sure." I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to me. "You've been raising my children as your own, but you're not completely sure they're actually yours." "Marcus, it's complicated. No, it's not complicated. It's simple. You fell in love with my wife, you had an affair with her, you got her pregnant at least twice, and you both decided to let me pay for everything while you played house behind my back. We never meant to hurt you. You never meant to get caught. There's a difference." David put his head in his hands. "What do you want me to say, Marcus? That I'm sorry?" "I am sorry. That I wish things had been different?" "I do. But I can't change what happened. You could have told me the truth 30 years ago. And then what? You would have divorced Denise, the kids would have grown up in a broken home, everyone would have been miserable. So instead you decided to make me miserable while living your happy little lie. You weren't miserable. You had a good life. A successful business, beautiful children, a wife who took care of you. A wife who was in love with another man. My own brother. She loved you too, Marcus. She still loves you. Not the way she loves you." He couldn't argue with that because we both knew it was true. "So what happens now?" he asked. I looked at my brother, this man I'd shared a childhood with, worked alongside, trusted with my deepest secrets, and I felt nothing but cold rage. "Now you're going to help me figure out how to fix the mess you've made of my life." "What do you mean?" "I mean you owe me, David. You owe me 30 years of truth, 30 years of support, 30 years of being a real brother instead of a snake. And you're going to pay that debt." "How?" I smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. "We're going to tell everyone the truth. Starting with the kids." The look of panic that crossed his face told me I'd found his weak spot. He could handle me knowing about the affair. He could handle Denise knowing that I knew. But the thought of telling Angela and Denise Jr. that their uncle was actually their father, that terrified him. Good. He should be terrified. For 30 years, I'd been the one carrying all the fear, all the uncertainty, all the responsibility. Now it was his turn. The next few days were the longest of my life. David had agreed to meet with Denise and me that weekend to figure things out, but I could tell he was already planning his escape. He started avoiding my calls, canceled our usual family dinner that Sunday, and according to Denise, he'd been asking strange questions about work opportunities in other cities. Denise herself was walking around the house like a ghost. She'd tried to talk to me several times, but I wasn't ready to hear her excuses or apologies. Every time I looked at her, I saw 30 years of lies. Every time she said my name, I heard David's name echoing in my head from our anniversary night. But it was the kids that really broke my heart. Marcus Jr. called on Wednesday, wanting to know if something was wrong. Mom sounds weird on the phone, Dad. And Uncle David hasn't returned any of my calls. Did something happen? How do you tell your 36-year-old son that his mother has been having an affair with his uncle for most of his life? How do you explain that his sisters might actually be his half-sisters? How do you destroy a man's understanding of his own family? We're working through some family issues, I told him. I'll call you back in a few days. Dad, you're scaring me. What kind of family issues? The kind that adults have to handle, son. Trust me on this. But trust was exactly what I couldn't ask for anymore. I'd trusted too much, for too long, and look where it had gotten me. Thursday afternoon, I was in my home office when I heard voices in the kitchen. Denise was supposed to be at work, but I recognized her laugh, the same laugh she'd had when she talked to David at parties, the laugh she'd never quite used with me. I walked to the kitchen and found them together. David was holding her hands across the kitchen table, and they were talking in low, urgent voices. When they saw me, they sprang apart like teenagers caught by their parents. Marcus, Denise said, her voice shaky. David came by to dash. To what? To plan your next move? To figure out how to manage the situation now that your husband knows the truth. David stood up, trying to look authoritative. We need to talk about this rationally, Marcus. Getting angry isn't going to solve anything. Rationally? I laughed. You want me to be rational about the fact that you've been screwing my wife in my own house while I was at work supporting your bastard children? Don't call them that, Denise snapped. Don't you dare call our daughters that. Our daughters. I stared at her. Are they our daughters, Denise? Or are they David's daughters? Because you keep changing your story. They're your daughters, David said. Biology doesn't matter. You raised them. You love them. They love you. Biology doesn't matter? I pulled out the DNA test results I'd found and slammed them on the table. Then why did you run DNA tests? Why did you need to know whose children they really were? They both stared at the papers like I'd just pulled out a loaded gun. Marcus, how did you get those? Denise whispered. I found them in your jewelry box, along with your love letters, your secret phone, your hotel receipts, and your bank statements showing money David's been giving you for years. Did you really think you could hide a 30-year affair in the digital age? David sat back down heavily. What do you want, Marcus? Money. You want me to pay you back for supporting the girls? I'll do it. You think this is about money? Then what is it about? It's about my life. I shouted. It's about 40 years of my life that were built on lies. It's about working myself to death to support children who had another father, a wife who loved another man, a family that was never really mine. You're our family, Denise said, tears streaming down her face. You're the father of our children, the man I married, the person who built this life with me. Built this life with you? I built this life for you. There's a difference. I was the fool who worked and paid and sacrificed while you two lived in your fantasy world where you got to have everything. Each other, the children, the security, the respectability of marriage, without any of the consequences. We never meant for it to go on this long, David said. Then when? When exactly were you planning to tell me the truth? When I was on my deathbed? When the kids were adults with children of their own? When would have been the right time to let me know that my entire life was a lie? Neither of them had an answer for that. You know what the worst part is? I continued. It's not even the affair. It's not even that you fell in love with each other. The worst part is that you made me complicit in my own humiliation. You made me pay for your relationship. You made me work to support your love affair. You turned me into the fool who was funding his own betrayal. Marcus, please, Denise begged. We can figure this out. We can work through this. Work through this. How exactly do we work through 30 years of lies? How do we work through the fact that you've been using me as a cover story while building a life with my brother? We could separate, she said quietly. David and I could move away. You could have the house, see the kids whenever you want, and we could all try to move on. I stared at her in disbelief. You think you can just walk away? You think you can just take your lover and disappear, leaving me to explain to our children why their mother abandoned them for their uncle? We wouldn't be abandoning them. Yes, you would. Because once the truth comes out, once everyone knows what you've been doing, those kids are going to have to choose sides. And you know what? I don't think they're going to choose the parents who lied to them their entire lives. The look of terror that crossed both their faces told me I'd hit the mark. They'd been so focused on managing me, on keeping me quiet and compliant, that they hadn't considered what would happen when the rest of the family found out. Our parents, our siblings, our friends, our community. Everyone who'd looked up to us as the perfect couple, the ideal family, the success story of two people who'd built something beautiful together. You haven't told anyone, have you? David asked. Not yet. Marcus, please, Denise said. Think about what this would do to the kids. Think about what it would do to Mom and Dad. They're in their 80s. Do you really want to destroy them with this? You should have thought about that 30 years ago. But we didn't, David said. We made a mistake, and it got out of hand, and now we're all trapped in it. But we don't have to destroy everyone else because of our mistake. Your mistake. I looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Your mistake was getting caught. Your mistake was keeping this going for 3 decades. Your mistake was making me raise your children and pay for your lifestyle and live in ignorance while you lived in truth. So what do you want? He asked again. What would it take for you to keep this quiet? And that's when I realized something that chilled me to the bone. They weren't sorry for what they'd done to me. They were sorry they'd been caught. They weren't trying to make amends. They were trying to minimize damage. Even now, even with all the evidence laid out in front of them, even with their 30-year lie exposed, they were still trying to manage me. That's when I decided they both had to pay. I wasn't planning to tell anyone about Denise and David's affair, at least not right away. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out how to handle the situation without destroying my children's lives. But sometimes life makes decisions for you. It was Marcus Jr. who showed up at my door Friday evening, unannounced and clearly worried. Dad, I know something's going on, he said as soon as I let him in. Mom's been crying every time I call her. Uncle David won't return my messages at all. And you've been avoiding my calls too. Just tell me what's happening. I looked at my son, my biological son, the only one of my children who was definitely mine, and I saw myself at his age. Trusting, loyal, believing that the people he loved would never hurt him. I couldn't bear to take that innocence away from him. It's between your mother and me, son. Marriage stuff. We'll work it out. It involves Uncle David too, doesn't it? That's why he's not answering his phone. Marcus Jr. had always been perceptive. Even as a child, he'd been the one to notice when something was off, when the adults were keeping secrets, when the family dynamics didn't quite make sense. Why would you think it involves David? Because he's been weird for weeks. Ever since your anniversary, actually. He came by my apartment last weekend, asking strange questions about whether I thought you and Mom were happy, whether I'd ever noticed anything odd about the family, whether I thought families should keep secrets to protect each other. My blood went cold. David had been testing the waters, trying to figure out how much Marcus Jr. knew or suspected. What did you tell him? I told him that you and Mom seemed as happy as any couple married for 40 years, and that I didn't know what he was talking about with the family secrets. But Dad, he looked scared. Uncle David never looks scared. I made a decision in that moment that changed everything. My son deserved to know the truth, even if it was going to hurt him. Sit down, Marcus. Dad, you're making me nervous. Sit down. He sat on the couch, and I took the chair across from him. The same chair David had sat in when I'd confronted him earlier that week. What I'm about to tell you is going to be hard to hear. And I need you to let me finish before you say anything, okay? He nodded, but I could see the fear growing in his eyes. I told him everything. The anniversary night discovery, the evidence I'd found, the confrontations with both Denise and David. I told him about the DNA tests, about the possibility that his sisters weren't biologically mine, about the 30-year affair that had defined our family without any of us knowing it. When I finished, Marcus Jr. sat in silence for a long time. Then he put his head in his hands and started laughing. Not happy laughter, but the kind of bitter laughter that comes when everything suddenly makes sense. I knew something was off, he said finally. I've known since I was a kid. The way Mom and Uncle David looked at each other. The way they'd stop talking when I walked into a room. The way they seemed to have their own language, their own jokes, their own world that didn't include you or me or the girls. You knew. Not consciously. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I always wondered. And as I got older, especially after I got married and understood what real love looked like, I could see that you and Mom didn't have it. You loved her, Dad. Anyone could see that. But she didn't love you back the same way. His words hit me like a physical blow. My own son had been able to see what I'd been blind to for 40 years. I'm sorry, Dad. I should have said something. You were a child. It wasn't your responsibility to fix your parents' marriage. But I'm not a child now. And if what you're saying is true, if Angela and Denise Jr. are actually Uncle David's daughters, then this affects all of us. This changes everything about who we are as a family. What do you think I should do? I think you should tell the girls. They have a right to know who their real father is. Even if it destroys them. Dad, keeping secrets is what got us into this mess in the first place. More secrets aren't going to fix anything. We talked for hours. Marcus Jr. helped me see things from angles I hadn't considered. He pointed out that Angela and Denise Jr. might actually be relieved to know why they'd never felt like they quite fit in our family, why they'd always seemed closer to David than to me, why they'd inherited none of my personality traits or interests. Angela's always said she doesn't understand where her artistic talents came from, he said. You and Mom are both practical people, but she's this creative dreamer who sees the world differently. And David was an art major in college, remember? Before he switched to business. The more we talked, the more evidence Marcus Jr. provided that he'd been unconsciously collecting for years. Little things that hadn't seemed important at the time, but that now painted a clear picture of the truth. By the end of the evening, I had something I hadn't expected to find, an ally. My son was on my side, ready to help me navigate the most difficult situation of my life. What do you want to do about Mom and Uncle David? He asked as he was getting ready to leave. I want them to face the consequences of what they've done. What kind of consequences? I thought about that for a moment. What did I want? Revenge. Justice. An apology that would never be enough? Public humiliation. Financial compensation? I want everyone to know the truth, I said finally. I want our family, our friends, our community to know what kind of people they really are. I want them to lose the respect and admiration they've been living on while they betrayed me. That's going to hurt the girls too. The girls are going to be hurt no matter what. At least this way, they'll know the truth about who they are and where they came from. They can decide for themselves how to handle it. Marcus Jr. nodded. I'm with you, Dad. Whatever you need me to do. Having my son's support gave me strength I didn't know I still had. For the first time since our anniversary night, I felt like I might actually be able to get through this. But I still had to figure out how to tell two daughters that their father wasn't their father, and their uncle was. With Marcus Jr. on my side, I felt like I finally had the strength to move forward with exposing the truth. But I needed to be strategic about it. Denise and David had had 30 years to perfect their deception. I needed to make sure that when I revealed their lies, it would be impossible for them to deny or minimize what they'd done. Marcus Jr. and I spent the next week gathering additional evidence and planning our approach. He helped me organize all the documents I'd found, the hotel receipts, love letters, bank statements, DNA test results, into a timeline that showed the progression of the affair over 3 decades. "This is like building a legal case," Marcus Jr. said as we spread everything out on my dining room table. "We need to show pattern, intent, and impact." Pattern was easy to establish. We had evidence of David and Denise meeting secretly going back to the late 1980s. Hotel stays, restaurant visits, gifts purchased, phone calls made, all while she was married to me and raising children she claimed were mine. Intent was harder to prove, but the love letters helped. David had written about their future together, and about how they were building a life, while using me as cover. Denise had responded with letters about how much she loved their stolen moments, and how she dreamed of a time when they wouldn't have to pretend anymore. Impact was the most devastating part. We calculated how much money I'd spent over the years supporting children who might not be biologically mine, paying for family vacations that David secretly attended as the girl's real father, funding a lifestyle that allowed Denise to maintain her affair while looking like the perfect wife and mother. "Dad," Marcus Jr. said as we tallied up the numbers, "this is over $1 million. Between the mortgage payments, private school tuition, music lessons, sports fees, college costs, medical expenses, you've spent over $1 million raising Uncle David's children." $1 million. 40 years of my labor, reduced to a number on a spreadsheet. But money wasn't really the point. The point was justice. The point was making sure that everyone who had looked up to Denise and David as pillars of the community understood who they really were. We decided to start with the immediate family. Angela and Denise Jr. deserved to know the truth before anyone else. Then we'd tell my parents, David's parents, our siblings. After that, we'd let the gossip network of our church and neighborhood do the rest. "We need to be prepared for them to fight back," Marcus Jr. warned me. "Mom and Uncle David aren't going to just accept this quietly. They're going to try to control the narrative, make themselves look like victims, maybe even claim that you're making everything up because you're jealous or having a midlife crisis. Let them try. We have evidence. Evidence can be explained away if people want to believe the explanation. Uncle David is charming. People like him. Mom is respected in the community. They're going to have supporters who don't want to believe the truth." Marcus Jr. was right, of course. David had always been the smooth talker, the one everyone trusted and admired. Denise had built a reputation as the devoted wife and mother, active in church committees and neighborhood associations. They had decades of goodwill built up, while I was just the quiet contractor who worked hard and kept to himself. "Then we need to make sure the evidence is undeniable," I said. That's when Marcus Jr. suggested something I hadn't thought of, confronting them with witnesses present. "We invite them over for Sunday dinner," he said. "Angela and Denise Jr. will be there, like always. And then we present the evidence in front of everyone. They can't deny it, can't claim you're making it up, can't try to manage the story later." The idea terrified me and thrilled me at the same time. One family dinner that would destroy 40 years of lies and force everyone to face the truth at once. "Are you sure you want to put your sisters through that?" "Dad, they're going to have to go through it sometime. At least this way, they'll hear the truth from us instead of through family gossip or social media." We planned it carefully. I would invite everyone over for Sunday dinner, like we'd done hundreds of times before. But this time, instead of David helping Denise in the kitchen while I grilled outside and the kids watched TV, we'd all sit around the dining room table and I'd present the evidence of their 30-year betrayal. Marcus Jr. would be there to support me and to help explain things to his sisters. We'd have copies of all the documents, photographs of the evidence, even printouts of the text messages from Denise's secret phone. What if they deny everything? I asked. Then we ask them to explain the evidence. We ask them to provide alternative explanations for 30 years of hotel receipts, love letters, and secret communications. We ask them to explain why Mom has been carrying on a relationship with a man who isn't her husband, and why Uncle David has been acting like the father of children who supposedly aren't his. The more we planned, the more confident I became. This wasn't about revenge, exactly. It was about justice. It was about making sure that the people who had lied to me, stolen from me, and betrayed me for 30 years couldn't just walk away unscathed. But there was something else, too. Something darker that I wasn't proud of but couldn't deny. I wanted them to hurt the way I was hurting. I wanted them to feel exposed and humiliated and betrayed. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to have your entire life revealed as a lie. Most of all, I wanted David to lose what mattered most to him: his reputation, his standing in the family, his relationship with the children he'd been secretly fathering for decades. And I wanted Denise to face the consequences of choosing love over loyalty, passion over commitment, excitement over stability. Sunday dinner was going to change everything. I just had to make sure I was ready for what came after. Sunday afternoon arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that makes you believe in fresh starts and new beginnings. The irony wasn't lost on me as I prepared what would likely be the last family dinner we'd ever have together. Denise had spent the morning cooking, bustling around the kitchen like this was just another normal Sunday. She'd made all of David's favorite dishes: pot roast with gravy, mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, cornbread with honey butter. Even now, even knowing that I knew the truth, she was still taking care of him first. Angela arrived at 2 o'clock with her husband James and their 6-year-old daughter, Sophia. Denise Jr. came alone. She divorced her husband 2 years ago and was still rebuilding her life. Marcus Jr. had arrived early to help me set up the evidence in my home office, where we could present it after dinner. David was the last to arrive, carrying flowers for Denise and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than most people's weekly groceries. He hugged everyone, played with Sophia, complimented Denise on how good everything smelled. The perfect uncle, the beloved brother-in-law, the man everyone looked up to and respected. If I hadn't spent the last 2 weeks drowning in evidence of his betrayal, I might have believed the performance myself. Dinner conversation was strained. Angela and Denise Jr. kept looking between me and their mother, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. Marcus Jr. barely spoke, pushing food around on his plate. James tried to fill the silence with stories about work and updates on Sophia's school activities. "Dad, you're awfully quiet tonight," Angela said during dessert. "Everything okay?" "Actually, there's something I need to discuss with all of you," I said. "Something important." "What kind of something?" Denise asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "Family business. Why don't we move to the living room where we can be more comfortable?" As everyone relocated, I caught David's eye. He looked like he was about to bolt. Good. He should be afraid. Marcus Jr. helped me carry in the boxes of evidence from my office. When everyone saw the documents, photos, and printed emails spread across the coffee table, the atmosphere in the room changed instantly. "Marcus, what is all this?" Angela asked. "This," I said, picking up the secret phone, "is evidence of a 30-year affair between your mother and your Uncle David." The silence that followed was absolute. Even Sophia stopped playing with her toys and looked up at the adults, sensing that something serious was happening. "Dad," Denise Jr. said slowly, "what are you talking about?" I looked at Denise, giving her one last chance to tell the truth herself. She stared back at me with tears in her eyes, but she didn't say anything. "Your mother and David have been having an affair since before you were born," I said. "These are their love letters, their secret phone records, their hotel receipts from trips they took together while lying to me about where they were." That's impossible," Angela stammered. "Mom would never. Uncle David would never." "Read the letters," Marcus Jr. said gently. "Read the text messages. Look at the hotel receipts." David finally found his voice. Marcus, please. Think about what you're doing to the kids. What I'm doing. I stood up, fury boiling over. What I'm doing is telling my children the truth about their family. Something you and their mother should have done 30 years ago. Dad, Angela said, picking up one of David's love letters with shaking hands. This can't be real. It's real, sweetheart. And there's more. I pulled out the DNA test results and handed them to her. These are the results of paternity tests your mother had done. According to these tests, you and Denise Jr. are not my biological daughters. David is your father. The sound Angela made was unlike anything I'd ever heard. Part scream, part sob, part animal wail of pain. She dropped the papers like they were on fire, and looked back and forth between me and David with complete horror. No, she whispered. No, 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 no. Denise Jr. grabbed the DNA results and read them for herself. When she looked up, her face was completely white. Is this true? She asked her mother. Denise was crying too hard to speak. Is this true? Denise Jr. screamed. Yes, David said quietly. It's true. The explosion that followed was unlike anything I could have prepared for. Angela started hyperventilating. Denise Jr. threw the DNA results at her mother and stormed toward the door. James gathered up Sophia and took her outside to protect her from the chaos. Marcus Jr. tried to comfort his sisters while shooting looks of pure hatred at David. How could you? Angela gasped between sobs. How could you do this to us? How could you lie to us our entire lives? We never meant for it to happen, Denise managed to say through her tears. But it did happen. Denise Jr. shouted from the doorway. It happened for 30 years. Every family dinner, every holiday, every time I called him Uncle David, you both knew he was actually my father. We were trying to protect you, David said. Protect us? Angela laughed hysterically. From what? From knowing who our real father is? From understanding why we never felt like we quite belonged in this family? From knowing why Dad always seemed a little distant with us compared to Marcus Jr. That last comment hit me like a punch to the gut. Had I been distant with the girls? Had I unconsciously treated them differently because some part of me always suspected they weren't mine? Angela, honey, I said, reaching for her. Don't touch me, she screamed. Don't any of you touch me. I don't know who anyone is anymore. I don't know what's real and what's a lie. My whole life is a lie. She ran out of the house, with James and Sophia hurrying after her. Denise Jr. followed, but not before turning back to look at her mother and David one last time. I never want to see either of you again, she said with cold finality. After the girls left, the house felt like a tomb. Marcus Jr. sat on the couch, staring at the evidence scattered across the coffee table. Denise had collapsed into my recliner, sobbing uncontrollably. David stood by the window, looking out at the street like he was planning his escape route. Well, I said into the silence. That went about as well as I expected. Marcus, please, Denise begged. We have to fix this. We have to find a way to fix this. Fix what? The 30 years of lies? The fact that you let me raise another man's children? The fact that you've been living a double life since before our first child was born? We can explain things to the girls, David said, turning from the window. We can help them understand. Understand what? That their uncle is actually their father? That their mother has been cheating on their stepfather their entire lives? That everything they believed about their family was a carefully constructed lie? Don't call yourself their stepfather, Denise said sharply. You're their father in every way that matters. You raised them, you loved them, you were there for every milestone, every achievement, every heartbreak. But I wasn't their choice, was I? They never got to choose who their father would be because you made that decision for them 30 years ago. Marcus Jr. finally spoke up. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Okay, she whispered. Did you ever love Dad? Really love him? Or was he just convenient? The question hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. I realized I was holding my breath, waiting for an answer I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. I did love your father, she said finally. I do love him. But not the way you love David. No, not the way I love David. Even after everything I'd learned, hearing her say it out loud still felt like being stabbed. 40 years of marriage, and she was confirming that I'd always been second choice. Why did you marry him then? Marcus Jr. asked. Because David didn't ask me to marry him. Because I thought what I felt for David was just infatuation, physical attraction. I thought it would fade over time, and that what your father and I had would grow into something deeper. But it didn't fade. No, it got stronger. And you never thought to tell Dad the truth? To get divorced and marry the man you actually loved? We talked about it, David said. Many times over the years. But by then there were children involved. Marcus was working so hard to provide for the family. We had built a life that included all of you, and we didn't want to destroy that. So instead you decided to destroy Dad. We didn't mean to destroy anyone, Denise protested. We thought we could make it work. We thought we could keep everyone happy. By living a lie, I said. By making me unknowingly pay for your relationship while you both got everything you wanted, each other, the children, financial security, social respectability. Marcus, I know you're angry. Angry doesn't begin to cover what I'm feeling, Denise. You've stolen 40 years of my life. You've made me complicit in my own humiliation. You've turned me into the fool who funded his own betrayal. So what happens now? David asked. I looked at both of them, the wife who'd never really been mine and the brother who'd betrayed me for 3 decades, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not peace, exactly, but resolution. Now you both get to live with the consequences of what you've done. The girls know the truth. Marcus Jr. knows the truth. And by tomorrow, everyone else will know too. What do you mean? Denise asked. I mean I'm done keeping your secrets. I'm done protecting your reputations. I'm done pretending that we're one big happy family when we're actually a web of lies and betrayal. You're going to tell everyone? I'm going to tell the truth. What happens after that is up to the people who hear it. David and Denise looked at each other, and I saw something pass between them, some silent communication that excluded me, just like it had for 30 years. But for the first time in 4 decades, I didn't care. I wasn't going to spend any more energy trying to decode their secret language or understand their private world. I was finally free. The next morning, I started making phone calls. First, I called my parents. They'd been married for 55 years and thought Denise and I were the perfect example of lasting love. Telling them that their son had been betrayed by his wife and his own brother was one of the hardest conversations of my life. Marcus, are you sure about this? My father asked after I'd explained everything. This is a serious accusation. Dad, I have 30 years of evidence. Love letters, hotel receipts, DNA tests, bank records. This isn't an accusation. It's a fact. My mother cried. My father got angry. But they both believed me, and they both promised to support me through whatever came next. Then I called David's parents. That conversation was even harder because they'd always been proud of their charming, successful son. Learning that he'd been having an affair with his brother's wife for 30 years destroyed their image of him completely. We raised him better than this, his mother said through tears. We taught him about loyalty and family and doing the right thing. You did raise him better, I agreed. But somewhere along the way, he chose love over loyalty. And now we all have to deal with the consequences. I called our siblings, our closest friends, the people at our church who'd looked up to us as an example of Christian marriage. Each conversation was painful, but also liberating. For the first time in 40 years, I was telling the complete truth about my life. The reactions were mixed. Some people were shocked and supportive. Others were skeptical and asked if I was sure I wasn't overreacting. A few suggested that maybe I should forgive and try to work things out for the sake of the family. But the most satisfying call was to David's boss. "I thought you should know," I told him, "that one of your senior sales managers has been having an affair with his brother's wife for 30 years, fathering children with her while letting his brother support them financially. Mr. Washington, I'm not sure why you're telling me this. Because David represents your company at client events, church functions, community activities. He presents himself as a family man with strong moral values. I thought you should know what his actual values are." There was a long pause. "Thank you for the information. We'll look into this." By the end of the week, David had been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Word had spread through our social circles like wildfire. People were taking sides, gossiping, speculating about details they didn't know. Denise had stopped going to church, stopped attending her book club, stopped participating in neighborhood activities. David had moved out of his apartment and was staying with a cousin in another city. The girls still weren't speaking to any of us. Marcus Jr. was angry at everyone except me. Our perfect family had imploded completely, exactly as I'd planned. But instead of satisfaction, I felt empty. Revenge, it turned out, was a cold comfort when you were still left with the wreckage of your life. 6 months after that Sunday dinner from hell, the fallout was still spreading through our lives like ripples from a stone thrown into still water. Angela had started therapy to deal with what she called the trauma of learning my entire identity was a lie. She'd changed her last name back to her maiden name, ironically, Washington, and was considering moving to another state to get away from all the gossip and speculation. Denise Jr. had cut off contact with Denise completely but was slowly rebuilding a relationship with David. She called him biological father now, never dad, and their conversations were stiff and formal. She'd also started therapy and was working through decades of feeling like she didn't quite fit in our family. Marcus Jr. had become my strongest supporter, but I could see the pain in his eyes every time we talked about what had happened. He'd lost his innocence about family, about trust, about the reliability of the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. Denise had filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. She was asking for half of everything, despite the fact that she'd spent 40 years lying to me and stealing from me. Her lawyer was arguing that adultery wasn't grounds for reduced alimony in Georgia, and that I'd have to prove financial harm beyond normal marital expenses. David had lost his job. The company decided that his moral character issues made him unsuitable for representing them in the community. He'd moved to Florida, where he was working as a regular salesman for a car dealership, making a fraction of what he'd earned before. Our parents were struggling to understand how they'd missed such a massive deception happening right under their noses. Both sets were embarrassed, hurt, and angry. Family gatherings were awkward affairs where no one knew what to say or how to act. The church community had split into factions, those who supported me for telling the truth, those who thought I should have handled it privately, and those who believed that airing family business publicly was somehow worse than the betrayal itself. Our friends didn't know how to navigate the situation. Couples who'd socialized with all four of us for decades now had to choose sides or avoid us entirely. The house felt too big and too quiet. 40 years of memories contaminated every room. I'd started sleeping in the guest room because I couldn't stand to be in the bed where Denise had moaned David's name. But there were positive consequences too. For the first time in decades, I wasn't living in ignorance. I wasn't being lied to, manipulated, or used. I wasn't funding someone else's love affair or raising another man's children under false pretenses. I was free. Broken, but free. People ask me if I regret exposing the truth. They ask if I wish I'd handled things differently, if I think the collateral damage was worth it, if I'd choose ignorance over knowledge, if I could go back and make the choice again. The answer is complicated. Do I regret learning the truth? Never. Living a lie is no life at all, even if the lie is comfortable and the truth is devastating. Every man deserves to know if his wife loves another man. Every father deserves to know if the children he's raising are biologically his. Every person deserves to live in reality, not in a carefully constructed fantasy designed to benefit other people. Do I regret how I handled it? Sometimes. Maybe there was a way to reveal the truth without destroying my daughter's sense of self. Maybe there was a way to confront Denise and David without humiliating them publicly. Maybe there was a way to get justice without getting revenge. But I'm not sure. When you've been betrayed for 30 years, when the people you trust most have been systematically lying to you and stealing from you and making you complicit in your own humiliation, it's hard to respond with measured restraint. The truth is, I wanted them to hurt. I wanted them to face consequences. I wanted everyone to know what kind of people they really were behind their masks of respectability. And they did hurt. They did face consequences. Everyone does know the truth now. But the cost was higher than I expected. My daughters will carry the scars of this revelation for the rest of their lives. My son lost his faith in family. My grandchild will grow up knowing that her family is fractured and complicated in ways that most children never have to understand. Sometimes justice and wisdom don't align perfectly. Sometimes doing the right thing still feels wrong. Sometimes telling the truth creates more pain than it heals. But lies are cancer, and cancer has to be cut out completely, or it spreads and kills everything it touches. I chose surgery over slow death, truth over comfortable deception, painful reality over beautiful fantasy. I'd make the same choice again. My name is Marcus Washington. I'm 58 years old, and 6 months ago I discovered that my 40-year marriage was built on a foundation of lies, betrayal, and systematic deception. My wife loved my brother. 2 of my 3 children were biologically his. For 30 years, I unknowingly funded their affair while they built a secret life together using my money, my trust, and my ignorance. When I found out, I had a choice: keep their secrets to preserve the illusion of family harmony, or tell the truth and let everyone deal with the consequences. I chose truth. And while the aftermath has been devastating for everyone involved, I don't regret that choice. Because here's what I've learned: you cannot build anything real on a foundation of lies. You cannot love someone who doesn't love you back the same way. You cannot trust people who have proven themselves untrustworthy. And you cannot live someone else's version of your life and call it your own. The truth hurts, but lies hurt more. They hurt longer, deeper, and more completely because they rob you of your agency, your dignity, and your right to make informed decisions about your own life. If you're living in a situation where something feels off, where pieces don't quite fit together, where people act in ways that don't align with their words, trust your instincts. Ask hard questions. Demand honest answers. And be prepared to act on what you discover, even if the action required is more difficult than the ignorance you're leaving behind. Don't be the man who spends 40 years funding his own betrayal. Don't be the fool who chooses comfortable lies over painful truths. Don't be the person who discovers at 58 that his entire adult life was someone else's carefully managed fiction. Be brave enough to live in reality, whatever that reality turns out to be. Look at your screen right now. You'll see 2 more stories waiting for you. Both from men like me who discovered the truth too late, but not too late to fight back. Click on whichever one speaks to you. And hit that notification bell if you want to join our brotherhood of men who refuse to be played for fools. Until next time, remember, the truth always comes out, and when it does, be ready.